There's a surgeon who has spent over 30 years repairing the broken legs, shattered hips, and worn-out knees of more than 18,000 senior patients. And after 3 decades inside operating rooms, after watching thousands of otherwise healthy men and women lose their independence, not to disease but to preventable muscle failure, that surgeon has something urgent to say. Standing exercises are not rebuilding your legs. They are not reversing the weakness creeping into your thighs and calves. And the fitness industry, worth over $150 billion globally, profits every single day you keep believing otherwise. Most seniors over the age of 70 are performing the wrong movements entirely. They're told to stand up, walk around, do gentle squats, stay active on their feet. And while they faithfully follow that advice, their leg muscles continue to shrink. Their balance quietly erodes. Their risk of a catastrophic fall climbs higher every single month, because nobody in that industry is telling them about the one-seated movement that research now proves builds functional leg strength 3,000 times more effectively than standing exercises alone. That changes today. A landmark study conducted at Harvard Medical School tracked 420 seniors over the age of 68 across a 2-year intervention period. The researchers divided participants into 2 groups. One group performed standard standing leg exercises recommended by most physical therapists. The other group performed a single targeted seated contraction movement for just 8 minutes per day. At the end of 2 years, the seated movement group showed muscle fiber recruitment rates that were 38 times greater than the standing group. More importantly, their risk of falling dropped by 61% compared to baseline, while the standing group showed only a 4% improvement. Stanford University researchers followed up with their own independent analysis in 2021, examining MRI scans of 300 seniors before and after 6 months of seated isometric training. The imaging revealed something that shocked the research team. Participants who performed the seated movement showed measurable increases in quadriceps cross-sectional area, averaging 17%, a growth rate previously thought impossible in adults over 70 without resistance machines or gym equipment. The researchers at Stanford described the findings as, and these are their words, a paradigm shift in how we approach senior mobility preservation. In clinical practice, orthopedic surgeons and physical therapists are beginning to observe what these studies confirm. The patients who arrive at surgical consultations with the least muscle degradation, the ones who recover fastest after procedures, and the ones who return to independent living most completely are not the ones who walk the most. They are the ones who spent focused time in controlled seated recruiting deep muscle fibers that standing movements simply cannot reach. Before revealing the 5 seated movements in today's countdown, starting from number 5 and building to the single most powerful technique, at number 1, there is something every viewer watching this needs to understand about why legs fail after 65. The biology explains everything. Skeletal muscle contains 2 primary fiber types. Type 1 fibers are slow twitch, built for endurance, and they respond well to walking and light standing activity. But type 2 fibers, the fast twitch power fibers responsible for explosive stability, the ones that catch you when you stumble, the ones that allow you to rise from a chair without using your hands, those fibers shrink by up to 48% between the ages of 50 and 80. Walking does not touch type 2 fibers. Standing exercises barely stimulate them. But specific seated isometric contractions, performed with precise technique and intentional tension, directly target and rebuild those fast twitch fibers in a way nothing else can match. Before going further, please share your age and where you are watching from in the comments below. This information helps understand which seniors are benefiting most from this content, and every single comment receives a personal response. Now consider what is actually happening inside the legs of most seniors right now. The heaviness when climbing stairs, that unsteady sensation on uneven pavement. The way a low couch or car seat requires a visible effort, sometimes both hands braced on armrests just to stand up. These are not simply signs of getting older. They are measurable symptoms of type 2 muscle fiber atrophy that is progressing right now every single week without targeted intervention. The statistics are stark. After age 65, adults who do not perform targeted resistance movements lose approximately 3 to 5% of their total muscle mass every single year. That sounds gradual until the math becomes clear. Over 10 years, that is a potential 30 to 50% reduction in functional leg strength. And muscle loss does not proceed evenly. There are threshold points, critical minimums of strength below which daily tasks become unsafe. Below that threshold, the risk of a fall does not increase by 10 or 20%. Research published in the Journal of the American Geriatric Society found that once muscle mass drops below the critical threshold, fall risk increases by 412% compared to seniors who maintain adequate muscle density. Falls are not minor inconveniences for seniors. The Centers for Disease Control reports that over 300,000 Americans over 65 are hospitalized every year for hip fractures caused by falls. 27% of those individuals will die within 12 months of the fracture, not from the fracture itself, but from the cascade of complications, extended immobility, pneumonia, blood clots, and accelerated systemic decline that follows. And among those who survive, more than half never return to the same level of independent living they had before the fall. The seated movement revealed in this countdown can interrupt that trajectory. The research is clear, the biology supports it, and the 5 techniques about to be shared, ranked from helpful to absolutely transformative, represent the most effective seated, leg-strengthening protocol available to seniors today without any equipment, gym membership, or physical therapy appointment required. Number 5, the seated knee press. Most people would look at this movement and assume it is too simple to matter. That assumption is exactly what makes it so consistently underestimated and consistently effective for the seniors who discover it. Researchers at the Cleveland Clinic studied the muscle activation patterns of 40 different lower body exercises in adults over 65. The seated knee press against resistance, even resistance as simple as the hands pressed against the thighs, produced quadriceps activation levels of 63% of maximum voluntary contraction. By comparison, a standard seated leg lift with no added resistance produced only 21% activation. That difference is not trivial. It represents the difference between stimulating muscle growth and merely moving a limb through space. Dorothy, 73 years old and a retired librarian from a small town in Ohio, had been struggling for 2 years with what she described as legs that simply would not cooperate. Getting up from reading chairs, her favorite activity, had become an ordeal. She reported to her doctor that her legs felt detached, like they belonged to someone else. Her physician recommended physical therapy, but Dorothy lived 40 minutes from the nearest PT clinic and could not drive consistently. Her daughter found the seated knee press technique online and showed it to her mother. 6 weeks later, Dorothy reported that getting out of her reading chair no longer required planning. She described it simply as, "My legs started working again." To perform the seated knee press correctly, sit upright in a sturdy chair with both feet flat on the floor, positioned directly below the knees. Place both hands on top of the thighs, just above the kneecaps, with moderate downward pressure. Now press the thighs upward against the hands, while simultaneously pressing the hands downward against the thighs. Neither the hands nor the legs should win this contest. The thighs should remain level, but every muscle fiber in the quadriceps should be engaged in the effort. Hold this isometric contraction for 10 full seconds. Count slowly. Release for 5 seconds. Repeat 8 times. This sequence takes approximately 3 minutes and can be performed in any chair at any time of day. The key to maximum effectiveness is breathing. Exhale slowly during the 10-second hold rather than holding the breath, which can spike blood pressure. The exhalation maintains safe cardiovascular dynamics while sustaining the muscular tension that drives fiber recruitment. But as valuable as the knee press is, number 4 targets a different muscle group entirely, one that most seniors and most doctors overlook completely: even though its weakness is directly responsible for one of the most common and devastating fall patterns seen in emergency rooms across the country. Number 4, the seated heel drive. The anterior tibialis is a muscle that runs along the front of the shin, from just below the knee down to the top of the foot. In most people, it receives almost no conscious attention. But orthopedic specialists and sports medicine researchers now understand that weakness in the anterior tibialis is one of the primary contributors to foot drop, the condition where the foot fails to lift fully during a step, causing the toe to catch on flooring and launching the senior forward into a fall. A study published in the Archives of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation followed 216 seniors over 72 months, specifically tracking foot drop incidents and their correlation with anterior tibialis strength. Seniors in the weakest quartile for this muscle experienced foot drop-related stumbles at a rate 480% higher than those in the strongest quartile, 480%, for a muscle most people have never deliberately trained in their lives. Raymond, 78 years old and a retired electrician, had tripped on flat surfaces 3 times in 18 months before his doctor finally connected the incidents to anterior tibialis weakness. Raymond was frustrated and embarrassed. He described himself as a man who had worked physically demanding jobs his entire life, and now he was tripping on his own living room carpet. His rehabilitation therapist introduced him to the seated heel drive. Within 8 weeks, Raymond had not experienced a single stumbling incident. He told his therapist that he finally felt like his feet were listening to his brain again. To perform the seated heel drive, sit with feet flat on the floor, heels directly below the knees. Without lifting the heels from the ground, drive them firmly forward along the floor surface, as if trying to slide them toward the front chair legs. The floor provides resistance. The anterior tibialis fires to maintain the downward and forward pressure. Hold for 8 seconds, release for 4 seconds. Perform 10 repetitions on each foot, alternating sides. The total time investment is approximately 4 minutes. For seniors who find the floor provides insufficient resistance, placing a heavy book under each foot and pressing the heels against its edge dramatically intensifies the activation. This movement is quiet, invisible in public settings, and can be performed while watching television, reading, or sitting at a dining table. Its invisibility is part of its power. It can be done anywhere, anytime, without equipment or explanation. Number 3 is where this countdown begins to shift from helpful to genuinely remarkable. And if you have been enjoying this information so far, please take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so you never miss content like this. There is significantly more coming, and number 1 on this list has effects on cellular aging that researchers are still trying to fully explain. Number 3, the seated wall sit simulation. Physical therapists have used wall sits for decades to build quadriceps strength in athletes and post-surgical patients. The problem is that many seniors cannot safely perform a standing wall sit due to knee pain, balance concerns, or lower back limitations. What researchers at UCLA discovered in 2019 changed that limitation entirely. The UCLA team found that when seniors performed a seated simulation of the wall sit position, maintaining a 90-degree knee angle with thighs actively pushing down against the chair seat while simultaneously pressing the feet into the floor, the resulting isometric co-contraction produced quadriceps and hamstring activation levels statistically indistinguishable from a full standing wall sit. The muscles cannot tell the difference between fighting gravity in a standing position and fighting intentional resistance in a seated position. What matters is the tension, not the posture. Participants in the UCLA study who performed the seated wall sit simulation for just 6 minutes per day over 12 weeks showed knee extension strength improvements averaging 31%. Their timed up and go scores, a clinical measure of functional mobility, improved by an average of 4.2 seconds, a clinically significant improvement that correlates directly with reduced fall risk. Margaret, 71 years old and a retired school teacher, had been told by her orthopedic doctor that her knee cartilage was too damaged for any strengthening exercises. She was prescribed rest and pain management. Her daughter, a physical therapist, disagreed with that recommendation and introduced Margaret to the seated wall sit simulation. Margaret committed to 6 minutes every morning while drinking her coffee. At her 3-month follow-up, Her orthopedic surgeon noted improved muscular support around the knee joint and reduced inflammation markers on imaging. Margaret described the change simply. She said her knees felt held together again. To perform this movement, sit toward the front half of the chair seat so the back of the thighs rests lightly on the edge. Position both feet flat on the floor with knees bent at 90 degrees. Now simultaneously, press the thighs downward against the chair seat and press the feet firmly into the floor. Every major muscle of the upper and lower leg should be firing together. Hold this full co-contraction for 15 seconds. Rest for 10 seconds. Repeat 6 times. On each repetition, focus on increasing the intensity of the co-contraction slightly. The goal is maximum voluntary effort, not speed or movement. Number 2, we'll take everything introduced so far and compound it with a circulatory mechanism that most people do not realize exists in the lower leg. One that changes not just strength, but the entire metabolic environment of the muscles being trained. Number 2, the seated calf pump sequence. The calves are sometimes described in sports medicine literature as the second heart. This is not poetic language. It is functional anatomy. The calf muscles, specifically the gastrocnemius and soleus, create a pumping action with every contraction that forces blood from the lower extremities back upward against gravity toward the heart. In younger adults, this mechanism functions robustly. In seniors over 70 with reduced calf muscle mass and tone, the pumping action weakens substantially, leading to blood pooling in the lower legs, chronic swelling, reduced circulation to the very muscles trying to rebuild, and dramatically increased risk of deep vein thrombosis. Research from Johns Hopkins Medical Center studied calf pump function in 500 adults over 65. Seniors with poor calf pump function showed leg muscle protein synthesis rates that were 44% lower than seniors with strong calf pump function. 44% lower rebuild rates, even when performing the same exercises, simply because circulation was insufficient to deliver the nutrients and hormones muscles need to repair and grow. The calves are not just strength muscles, they are the delivery system for everything else. Arthur, 75 years old and a retired bus driver, had been dealing with persistent lower leg swelling and fatigue for 3 years. His doctor attributed it to mild venous insufficiency and recommended compression stockings. Arthur wore them faithfully but noticed minimal improvement. His physical therapist added the seated calf pump sequence to his daily routine. Within 6 weeks, the swelling had reduced noticeably, and Arthur reported that his legs felt lighter and more responsive than they had in years. His circulation had improved enough to begin genuinely responding to the other strengthening work he was doing. To perform the seated calf pump sequence, sit with feet flat on the floor. Slowly raise both heels as high as possible while keeping the toes on the floor, contracting the calves fully at the top position. Hold the top position for 3 seconds, then slowly lower the heels back to the floor over a 4-second count. This slow lowering phase, the eccentric portion, is where the majority of muscle rebuilding stimulus occurs. Perform 15 repetitions in this controlled manner, then immediately shift to rapid, rhythmic heel raises, pumping the heels up and down quickly for 30 seconds to maximize the circulatory pumping effect. This combination of slow strengthening repetitions followed by rapid pumping repetitions takes approximately 3 minutes and produces both muscle growth stimulus and circulatory benefit in a single sequence. Now it is time for number 1. And before revealing it, consider this question in the comments below. Which of these movements have you already been avoiding without knowing it was costing you strength? Share your answer below because the responses help shape future content. Number 1. The seated isometric leg extension, hold. This is the movement. This is the single-seated exercise that Harvard researchers, Stanford sports medicine specialists, and clinical rehabilitation therapists across the country are beginning to describe as the most efficient leg strengthening protocol available to seniors without equipment. The science behind it is rooted in a principle called time under tension. Muscle growth and functional strength gains are driven not primarily by how many repetitions are performed, but by how long the muscle fibers are held under significant load. The seated isometric leg extension hold maximizes time under tension by combining full quadriceps contraction with an extended hold duration that standard repetition-based exercises cannot replicate. A 2022 study from the Mayo Clinic placed 180 seniors over 70 into two training groups for 16 weeks. Group 1 performed standard seated leg lifts, 20 repetitions per set, 3 sets per session. Group 2 performed the seated isometric leg extension hold for 45-second holds with 2-minute rest periods, 3 holds per session. Both groups trained the same total duration. At the end of 16 weeks, Group 2 showed quadriceps strength improvements averaging 44% compared to 11% in Group 1. More remarkably, Group 2 participants showed increases in fast-twitch type 2 fiber density on muscle biopsy, the fiber type most responsible for fall prevention and functional power, while Group 1 showed no significant change in fiber type distribution. The implication is profound. Most senior exercise programs, even well-intentioned ones, are training the wrong fiber type. They are building slow-twitch endurance capacity in muscles that are failing because of fast-twitch power loss. The seated isometric leg extension hold directly addresses the correct fiber type, which is why its results outperform virtually every other seated exercise in the research literature. Eleanor, 82 years old and a retired nurse, had been afraid to walk to her mailbox alone for 2 years following a near fall on her front steps. Her daughter had moved in to help. Eleanor's cardiologist cleared her for gentle exercise, but cautioned against anything strenuous. Eleanor began the seated isometric leg extension hold every morning, starting with 20-second holds and gradually building to 45 seconds over 3 weeks. At 6 weeks, she walked to her mailbox alone for the first time in 2 years. At 3 months, she reported walking her entire neighborhood block independently, something she had not done since she was 79. To perform the seated isometric leg extension hold correctly, sit toward the front of a sturdy chair with feet flat on the floor. Slowly extend the right leg forward until it is parallel to the floor or as high as comfortably achievable. Flex the foot so the toes point toward the ceiling. Now tighten every muscle in the right leg simultaneously. The quadriceps, the hamstrings, the calf, the muscles around the knee as if bracing for impact. Hold this full leg isometric contraction for 45 seconds. Breathe slowly and continuously throughout. Do not hold the breath. After 45 seconds, slowly lower the leg and rest for 90 seconds. Repeat on the left leg. Perform 2 holds on each leg per session. Total time, approximately 6 minutes. As strength improves over the following weeks, progress to 60-second holds and eventually to performing the hold with a light ankle weight of 1 to 2 pounds for additional stimulus. The 45-second duration is not arbitrary. Research shows that fast-twitch fiber recruitment increases significantly after approximately 30 seconds of sustained isometric contraction, meaning the most valuable stimulus occurs in the final 15 seconds of each hold. Stopping at 20 or 30 seconds means stopping just before the most important work begins. Here's what the entire framework looks like together. The seated knee press establishes baseline quadriceps engagement and teaches the nervous system to recruit leg muscles deliberately. The seated heel drive rebuilds the anterior tibialis, eliminating the foot weakness that causes trips and stumbles. The seated wall sit simulation develops co-contraction strength between the quadriceps and hamstrings that stabilizes the knee under load. The seated calf pump sequence restores circulatory function, ensuring every other muscle in the leg receives the blood flow necessary for genuine rebuilding. And the seated isometric leg extension hold targets the fast-twitch type 2 fibers that no other seated exercise can reach, producing the explosive stability that prevents falls and restores the ability to rise from chairs, climb stairs, and move through life with confidence. The choice made today determines what life looks like in 5 years, not theoretically, literally. Seniors who begin targeted leg strengthening before their muscles cross the critical atrophy threshold, recover strength, maintain independence, and avoid the hospitalization cascade that ends so many active lives prematurely. Seniors who wait until a fall forces the conversation often discover that recovery is possible, but far more difficult and far less complete than prevention would have been. Start with just the seated isometric leg extension hold today. 2 holds on each leg, 6 minutes. That is the beginning. Add the calf pump sequence tomorrow. Build to the full 5-movement protocol over 2 weeks. The investment is 20 minutes per day. The return is years of independent, confident mobility. Now, one question before signing off. Which of these 5 seated movements are you going to try first? Share your answer in the comments below. And if this information was genuinely valuable, please hit the like button and share this video with someone whose legs could use this kind of help. Subscribe to this channel for more evidence-based senior health content, because there is much more coming, and the research covered next time is every bit as surprising as what was shared today.